Minnesota shop today. We're going to do a little PSA grading 101. We are a PSA authorized dealer and we take mail-in as well as drop-off submissions at our Minnesota and Wisconsin locations. And you can also submit brake hits directly through us. So if you hit something in a brake that you want to submit, we got a form that you can fill out, and we send off a couple hundred cards every single Friday to PSA. Let's go ahead and dig in and go through this. All right, so the first question is why submit to PSA specifically? You got a lot of options to grade cards with. The main reason that I would recommend submitting it to PSA is just the industry standard has become PSA. It's become the most popular with collectors, and it's really going to be your best chance at increasing the value of the card. So if that's your goal and getting the card encased, PSA is going to be your best bet for that. PSA also has an attainable Gem Mint 10 grade. So with some of the other companies, it can be really tough, like Beckett, for example, it can be really tough to get an actual 10 grade on the card, and collectors really prefer to have that on the slab. So just having uniformity in people's collections as well is a huge piece of it. So, when more and more of everyone's cards are going into PSA slabs, it just makes it that much more enticing to send your cards to PSA. During COVID, obviously, PSA ended up having a huge backlog of cards. That is not the case anymore. They've been consistently dropping their estimated turnaround times on cards, and we're actually seeing a lot of submissions come back in as quick as a month for bulk submissions. So they're still estimating about 2 months, but we are seeing a lot of cards come back faster than that. Gone are the days where the cards taking a year would be a reason to not send to PSA. So another one of the primary questions that we get is just how to choose cards to grade. I kind of give two different options or two different reasons that you would submit cards. One is again on that value side. High dollar cards or cards that potentially can increase in value are ones that you would want to look at submitting. And the other one is just for personal collection purposes, to preserve the condition and to display them. Personally, I think that cards display really well in the PSA slabs. I like having the details of the card just right there listed. Some of mine, even if I don't think it's going to get a PSA 10 grade, I'll send in just to get authenticated, encapsulated, protected, and to display for future years. All right, when PSA looks over your cards to grade them, they're going to be looking at 4 different criteria. It's going to be centering, corners, edges, and surface. So when we're reviewing cards for you here in the store for your submissions, we'll be looking at those same 4 as well. Cards from different eras are going to have different kind of hot spots that we'll be looking at. Modern chrome cards are going to be looking a lot at the surfaces for any scratches or that type of stuff, as well as centering. Some of the older stuff, you're going to be looking more at centering and edges and corners versus the modern stuff. So it kind of just depends on the era, but you're gonna want to look at all of them, and don't forget about the back of the card, because a lot of times that's what people miss is, a minor indentation on the back of the card, and then the card comes back as a 6 or something because of them overlooking that back side of the card. One of my favorite accounts to follow on Instagram is Gem Rates. They have some really cool statistics on just cards graded each month by the different companies, just using their pop reports and tracking the different submissions that each company is taking. So looking at the most recent numbers, PSA graded 1.2 million items in the past month, and that is combined TCG and sports cards. And the next closest competitor was CGC with 181K, and a lot of those are TCG cards. SGC has made a little bit of a play over the last year or so, just by offering the quick turnarounds and low price points. But now SGC has actually been acquired by Collectors, which is the parent company for PSA. So I'll be interested to see how those two mesh going forward. One of the other cool stats that GemRate tracks is gem rates by era for the different companies. So as I was talking about PSA having an attainable Gem Mint 10 grade, we can see for the most recent era, just the 2020 releases, PSA sports cards are gemming at a 54% rate, and TCG at over 70% rate. Obviously, these cards are already being screened by collectors, so it's not that sports card coming out of a pack has a 50-50 shot at a PSA 10, but the ones that people are choosing to submit are coming back with 54% gem rate. For most modern collectors, increasing the value of cards is going to be one of the primary reasons to submit cards to PSA. Let's take a look at an actual example here. Our T-Wolves are in the playoffs right now. Anthony Edwards playing really well. So let's look at Anthony Edwards Prism Silver in both raw condition and PSA 10 condition. So looking at the raw sales on eBay, it looks like the last few have gotten around $250, $200, and the last PSA 10s are getting like $1,000 $1,000 to $1,400. So by sending off to PSA, we got a chance to increase the value of the card from $250 to $1,400 if you get a PSA 10 grade. Always selling your cards raw can be leaving a lot of money on the table, and we'll be looking at both the increase if it goes to PSA 10 as well as just covering the cost of grading, or whether or not it's worth it if it gets an 8 or a 9 grade when looking at submitting cards. And then just doing one more comparison, let's look at Anthony Edwards Silver SGC 10. So it looks like the last couple have been like $650 to $850 in that 10 grade. So PSA just gets a little bit of a premium. SGC 10 is going to fall between what a raw one would get and a PSA 10. So by sending to SGC, you'd be leaving a little bit of value on the table potentially. One of the biggest stumbling blocks for most collectors is the actual process of submitting the cards to PSA. If you've never done it before, it can be very confusing to go on to PSA's website, sign up for an account, fill out all the paperwork, and send it off to PSA. So it's a great reason to use a group submitter like us. Unless you're doing 20 plus cards consistently, it's going to be the same price or even cheaper to use us to have them sent in rather than doing it yourself. And it's pretty easy for us to go through and fill out all the paperwork since we're doing it every single week. So let's take a look at actually going through and submitting one card ourselves versus having us send it in. All right, so here we are at the PSA site. I'm gonna go ahead and build out a submission. So let's hit submit up here in the top right, start, new submission, trading cards, grading. See where this starts to get confusing. You got all these different service levels to pick from. If you just have one card, it's going to be this value 1980 to present for a modern card. And I'm just going to do an Anthony Edwards base prism. Type that in, and looks like that card right there. We're at 200, and we'll save that in there as quantity 1. Let's go to checkout and see how much it's going to be with shipping. So one card, sending it off to PSA myself, is going to be $45 plus whatever it costs me to ship it out there. So, you know, if I end up sending it priority or whatever, it's going to be like 10 bucks. So $55 to send in my one card, not saving any money versus sending it in through us for $21 or $25, depending on if you're prepping it or having us prep it. So like I was saying before, unless you're doing like 20 plus cards, it's really not going to save you any money to do this yourself and go through the headache of trying to fill out the forms, select the service level, and just get everything entered correctly. Now, digging into our process for submitting cards a little bit, we have a form listed on realsportscards.com that you fill out with all of the information. It can look a little scary at first because it says like 75 pages or whatever on the bottom, but that's just because you could submit up to 50 cards on any particular submission. So at the beginning, the first page is going to be some contact information for you, your details, return shipping if needed, and then each individual page is going to be a separate card. So as soon as you choose your service level, put in the card details, declared value, then you can just hit next and put in the details for the next card. It starts at $21 a card. That is if your card is all ready to go and you just need us to send it off to PSA for you. And then if you want us to review the card and prep it for you, you want to give it to us in a top loader or however, that would start at $25 per card, and it goes up from there based on the declared value of the card. So again, that can be a little bit confusing. We're always here to help. If you have any questions on choosing a declared value, feel free to reach out to us. But good rule of thumb is always to kind of go in between like a PSA 9 and PSA 10 value. You never want to assume that it's going to get a PSA 10 and automatically send it in at a higher service level. But if you do send it in at a lower service level, like the value level has a declared value limit of $500. So if your card is deemed by PSA to go over that once it's slabbed, like let's say that Anthony Edwards Silver is a $1,000 card, PSA will reserve the right to upcharge you to that service level that would fit the declared value of that card. It's not a huge deal, but we'll make sure to let you know if you do receive an upcharge on your card. If you do find out that you got an upcharge, it means that your card is worth more than you thought it was. So that's a great thing, but you do have to pay a little bit more, which is just how it is with PSA. You don't pay for anything upfront, so you pay for everything once we receive the cards back from PSA. And again, we ship out to PSA every Friday, so the most your cards are ever going to be with us is 1 week, and then they'll be going out. All right, so here we are, realsportscards.com. We got PSA grading right here at the top, or on mobile, I think it's right at the bottom. You can also just go to realsportscards.com/PSA-grading. But let's click in here. And this is going to have all kinds of information and FAQs if you have more questions that aren't answered in this video. Again, there's our different submission types. So you can either drop off at Real Sports Cards MN or Wisconsin. You can mail into Real Sports Cards Minnesota, and you can also submit break kits from Real Sports Cards Minnesota and Wisconsin. We got all the different price levels here, as well as the maximum declared value for the level, as well as the estimated turnaround time in business days from PSA. I think a lot of times people get tripped up on this where they think that it's just 5 days, but again, it's business days, and it's from the time that PSA actually checks it in. So even if you do one of these higher service levels where it's like 5 business days, that still is 1 week at PSA after they check it in. So you got the shipping out there as well as the return shipping. Again, everything's going out every Friday. If it takes a little bit longer than you expected, it's probably just because you got the shipping time on there going both directions. As soon as it comes back from PSA, you'll get an email from us as well as an invoice for the card. So let's go in and fill out the form to begin our submission. And Titus at realsportscards.com. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me there. Contact name. Nate wants my phone number, but I'm just going to put in a fake one here. And submission type is going to be drop off at Minnesota location. All right, so let's put in that Anthony Edwards. So it's going to be 2020 Prism Anthony Edwards, and we'll say base. The more details you can give us here, the better, but don't feel like you have to get everything perfect. You can also put in card number, that always helps too, or if it's serial number, put in the serial number for us. And this is gonna be a value submission at the $25 level, and declared value, I'm gonna put in 200 again. I don't have any other cards to submit, so that is gonna be it on the form. I just have to accept the terms. And boom, we are all set. That card is ready to be dropped off with Nate here at the store. So just bring it in, Nate will check it in, and you'll actually get an email saying that we've received that particular card. Or if you bring in 10 cards, it'll say that we've received those 10 particular cards after he checks them in. So that's a little overview of the process of actually submitting cards to PSA, either on your own or through us. Let's actually take a look at a couple cards and what I would look for on specific cards and get them ready for PSA. All right, so before we get started here, there's a couple things that are absolutely essential that you have if you're gonna be prepping cards yourself. You're gonna need card savers. It doesn't really matter what brand, but PSA really wants everything sent in these. During COVID, they, for a little bit, were okay with you sending in top loaders, but they really want these to make it easier to remove the cards safely for submission. The other thing is you're gonna need fresh penny sleeves. Nothing worse than cleaning off a card and putting it back into a dirty penny sleeve. So you need penny sleeves. You're gonna need some sort of microfiber. It's totally fine if you just have one from like sunglasses or your own glasses, but we got the Real Sports Cards one here today. And then this one is not quite as essential, but I love to have a centering tool. So this helps you actually score the centering for a particular card. So PSA will allow up to 60/40 on the front of the cards. This will give you a numerical score that you can score on here to see if it falls within the 60/40. They're a little bit more lenient on the back centering, but 60/40 on the front. All right, so I'm gonna look at 2 cards here. Both, I guess, technically modern cards, but we got a 2002 Joe Mauer Bowman, so a little bit different era. And then Anthony Richardson, red, white, and blue Prism rookie as well. So let's start with the Anthony Richardson. You also are gonna wanna make sure you have a very clean area. If you need to, you can always grab just like a piece of paper too and set the piece of paper down to look over your cards on, but just to make sure that you have a clean surface to use. So first thing we're gonna look at is the centering on this card. Just visually it looks a little bit off center, but again, I can use my card centering tool here to actually look at what this card would score. So this uses the dashes and thick lines to actually give a numerical centering score to it. Looks like we're at 3 on the left side there, and it's probably 4 on the right side. So if I go back to my centering sheets, 4-3 is 57-43. So even though it's a visually off center a little bit left to right, that still falls within the PSA 10 potential range. And then top to bottom looks pretty good, so I'm not even gonna worry about that one. Back centering, again, not quite as worried, but looks pretty good as well. So let's go ahead and take it out of the sleeve here now that we know centering falls within the recommended range. And then the next thing that I'm gonna look at is the surface of the card. So again, on these shiny prism surfaces, you're gonna kind of wanna move it around and get the different lighting. And I always like to look at it at kind of a long angle too. Looks pretty good. I see a little bit of dust on there, but nothing too concerning on the surface of this one. So let's use the microfiber to do a little wipe down. Be very careful not to catch any corners when you're doing this. I'm just checking it at a long angle to see if there's any dust still on it. All right, so surface of this one is gonna pass for me. I can see on the edges there's just a little bit of fraying. It's just from the card not being cut totally perfectly, but I don't see any like true defects. So what you can do if you see a little bit of fraying on the edges like that is I'm just gonna fold down my microfiber here. You can use it very carefully on the edges just to kind of clean it up. Again, be very careful of the corners. I can just pull off those little extra fibers, and we can do that on all sides. All right, so now those edges are looking quite a bit better. The last thing we're gonna look at is the corners. Again, it's 4 corners, but on both sides. So really 8 of them that we're gonna be looking at. So the front ones look totally fine. Again, most of the time on a Prism card like this, you're not gonna have too much to worry about on the corners, but still something to check. They just have a little bit more stability to them with the chrome finish. The back corners look pretty good. This one maybe not quite perfect, but I think this one will still pass for me. So I think this one, it has a good shot out of 10. I think at worst it's probably a 9, so I think we're gonna send this one in. All right, so one final thing as you're sleeving up the card is I wanna check one more time for fingerprints. It's a really easy fix, but I'm gonna start this in the penny sleeve and just give one last look on the edges to make sure that I didn't get any fingerprints on the card as I was reviewing it here. You can hold it in the sleeve, just do one last wipe down that microfiber before we slide it in and into a card saver. So this card is all ready to go to PSA just like that. All right, let's take a look at the Joe Mauer again. A little bit different era here. There's gonna be different things that we're looking at. This one has the black border on the 2 sides as well as the back, which can be really tricky and condition sensitive on this. Just the whiting shows really easily on those. So let's look at centering first. Looks pretty good to me. I don't think we need to score this one. Centering on the back looks pretty good as well. Surface looks solid on the front. Don't see any fingerprints or anything. Backside, don't see any indentations. I think we're good there. Looking at edges, the front edges look pretty good. Backside, maybe just a tiny bit of whiting, but overall for a black border card, this one looks really nice. This card, because it's such condition sensitive card, even an 8 is gonna be like a $50 card. So it can still be worth submitting even if we think it's an 8. But I think this one actually might have a shot to do even better. A little bit of dust just here on the back, so we'll clean that off. Yeah, back corners look really good. Front corners look really good. I think just because this is such a hard card to grade, I would probably guess that it's a 9, but I think this is one that I would send in of a Hall of Famer. Go Twins. Well, let's go ahead and get that one sleeved up and into the card saver. All right, Mauer's all ready to go to PSA. All right, so we got our 2 cards ready to go to PSA here. If you were to do this at home, these can be brought in and turned into Nate and submitted at the $21 level since they're all ready to go to PSA. If after watching the video and seeing the process of it, you're not comfortable doing cards like that, you can bring them in top loaders for submission at the $25 level or higher if it's a more expensive card. Any of the higher levels will include a free review, so there's not any price difference if you're prepping it yourself or having us prep it for you. But at that value level, if you're comfortable doing that, you can save a couple bucks. Otherwise, we'd rather just have us do it and look it over. It's just $25 a card, and you don't get charged anything if it fails our review. So after Nate or myself or whoever's reviewing cards that day goes over your card, you'll actually get an email saying whether or not the card passed or failed our review, as well as any notes that they left on the card's condition. All right, so that's going to conclude our PSA 101 video. Pretty much everybody that works at the Minnesota store and Wisconsin store has experience submitting cards to PSA. Again, we're sending out several hundred cards every single week, so we've all looked over thousands of cards at this point. If you have any questions and you're not local to us, you can reach out to psa@realsportcards.com with any other questions. So happy grading. I hope all of you get lots of PSA